The area in and around the Corbett National Park in northern India is truly a delight for the eye. It is these pristine mountains that tell the story of what lies in the depths of these beautiful forests. The melodious birds fill the air of nature's garden. The Semnopithecus entellus, also called the grey langur, stretch and play on the edge of the road that skirts the foothills and overlooks the stunning valley. The water streams from these mountains gush down to the plains of the Terai, helping the lush fields feed the humanity that lives on them. While mankind flourishes and gets larger, biodiversity suffers. The last few vestiges of nature's garden are under grave threat. These jungles have been home to elephants and tigers. Tuskers have fed themselves in these jungles and travelled all the way along the Bhabur forest belt, from what is now Rajaji National Park to Corbett National Park and beyond to Nepal, across the border. This elephant corridor is about 5 to 15 kilometers wide and is over 210 kilometers long. It is home to 1,500 elephants. While the poaching of elephants has been curbed, the elephant corridor itself is threatened by many human activities. What is required is a stringent law, not just for the park, but also the landscape and the corridor.
What sort of development we should have in this area? So we need to have a total arrangement with the people, with the government, with the revenue officials, and of course with the forest. What sort of arrangement should be done to secure these areas? What sort of development will be come up? What sort of construction should be allowed? Where it should not be allowed? At least a minimum chunk of the area should be kept intact to move the animals, which have already lost. That corridor already, major part is already lost.
Kavi Dayal is the Deputy Director of the Corbett National Park. He commands a force of 200 people to protect over 1,200 square kilometers of forest that has one of the largest concentrations of tigers in India. The latest census puts the number of tigers at 224 within the reserve and the surrounding forests.
2895289.
Patrolling is extensive and scientific, monitored by many organizations and government agencies. Camera traps have been put up by the Special Tiger Protection Force. These traps constantly monitor the animal movement and the patrolling. The patrol parties have GPSs, video cameras and binoculars to scan their territory. The patrollers say that they have to be on a constant lookout for keeping the poachers out. But they say the larger challenge today is the migratory corridor and the safety of the animals in that corridor.
ठीक है बाकी कोई दिक्कत आ रही है उधर क्या चल रहा है बताएं मैसेज ओवर.
Welcome to the boulder mining capital of the Bhabur and the Terai. The speed of the mining has been fast. The boulder collectors have emptied this river in the last few years. These boulders are mined to be used for construction of homes. While this just might seem the logical thing to do from the perspective of many, and having no impact on the habitat of the elephant, the reality is quite different. The boulder mining has made the rivers much deeper and faster. The animals are now unable to cross these fast-flowing rivers. As we travel on the edge of the Kosi River, we meet Indarram at the village of Jogipura. Just across this river, a few kilometers away, is the Corbett National Park. He tells us the story of the unfettered mining that has taken place in the area. Even as we are standing with him, in the background, We see a few trolleys that are taking out granulated sand for construction from the river illegally.
कम से कम भी नहीं तो रोज का अगर 1000 रुपया ट्रॉली का भी लिया जाए मतलब रबल्टी तो ये हिसाब लगा लो कि कम से कम भी नहीं तो 1400-1500 ट्रॉली रोज की जा रही है। पुलिस ने अपना आदमी छोड़ रखा है, वो 100 रुपये प्रति ट्रॉली लेता है। डीएफओ मतलब ऐसे हैं उनको तो महीने के महीने मंथली जा रही हैं। और जंगलात विभाग है तो वहाँ एसडीओ साहब हैं, वो उनको बैठे पहुँच रहा है। जंगल ही नहीं छोड़ा, फॉरेस्ट वाले खुद पैसे लेकर के पेड़ कटवाते हैं।
The result of the corruption is that thousands of tons of boulders, all extracted from this river, lie on the bank. The river is now almost naked. A recent study has concluded that removal of rocks from the watercourse has effects of reducing channel bed roughness and hence increases current flow velocity. This also damages the aqueducts that are fed by the rivers, resulting in loss of drinking and irrigation water that can cause great hardship for the local community. Such extensive mining results in flooding of the land on the side of the river, and farmers pay the price for it.
खेतों को साहब जहाँ वो भैंसें खड़ी है वहाँ से लेकर के और वहाँ तक हमारे खेत थे और ये सब खेत के बीच में बराबर होगा।
What the boulder mining does to the river is unimaginable. The height of the river has dropped 15 feet in this year alone, making the water current of the river much faster. Now this is a season when they're not supposed to mine, but what happens is that they continue to mine this river and denude the place entirely of all the boulders that we see. For example, right now what we are seeing here is these tractors. They're trying to mine as much as they can. Now this is mining of sand and mining of boulders which they use in construction. As we approach the group of sand miners, they make a hasty retreat, filling in the last bit they can. Obviously they understand that they're not supposed to do this, so as soon as we've come, they're pretty much scooting off. We're not come across to them as aggressive, so they're doing whatever they quickly can and they're going to leave. But this goes on constantly. What it does to the river, it primarily makes the river an uncrossable crossing for wildlife. It also makes all the land on the side of the river unusable because the water just flows in and the farmers suffer. These are mostly small illegal miners, but the big commercial ones extract truckloads. The impact of this mining on the corridor of the elephants and tigers is disastrous. But the miners are not the only culprits who have squeezed the migratory corridor. Hundreds of resorts have come up on the farmlands adjacent to the Corbett National Park. The elephants in the past were able to cross the farmlands and travel to neighboring forests. But the concrete monstrosities today make it impossible for any animal to cross, as most resorts have boundary walls. The government has not made any attempts to secure migration paths for elephants, and the construction has gone on unabated. The building of these resorts continues. We visited Corbett and the surrounding areas in July of 2011. There were at least 18 still under construction. The impact of the overbuilding will be a big blow to the conservation effort. As the corridor gets squeezed, animals begin straying into human habitations in villages that surround the Corbett. Villagers spend nights watching out for these elephants. There have been instances of human poisoning of the animals. On the edge of the Corbett Reserve is the village of Sundar Khal. At one time, this land was part of the forest. But many decades ago, these migrants from the mountains encroached and built their homes. Even after living here for nearly 40 years, they live in a state of constant fear. Many describe to us the stories of how difficult it is to live here.
मैं तो अवसर में नीचे भाग के आया, मैं नीचे भी गिर पड़ा, फिर देखा मैंने सब तब भागा चित्तल ऊपर को।
Meet 60-year-old Bachuli Devi. She lost her daughter-in-law just a few months ago. She was killed by a tiger when she'd gone to collect wood in the jungle. Bachuli Devi is now having to raise her 6 grandchildren. These residents are so scared they would like to leave this place if they have an alternate place to go.
बहुत मुश्किल है, 6 बच्चे हैं, कितनी लड़का पड़ी पूरी नहीं है, उसका गुजार है कि रोजगार नहीं है, अब कहाँ है, बुढ़िया है, 6 बच्चे हैं, बड़े समस्या खराब है, शेर इधर उधर रात भर घूमते रहते हैं, हाँ.
Tigers hide in these tall grasslands that surround the village, and at night, as soon as they get an opportunity, attack these villagers. So as a precautionary measure, the grass is being cut. But this is only a temporary solution. The village committee sits down for a discussion on how to find a permanent solution to all this. NGOs are working with the government and these villagers to figure a way out. The ideal scenario would be for these people to leave. But it will take a lot of convincing, as they are not sure that the government will honor the commitment it's making.
रिजॉर्ट को नहीं जाएगी, किसी प्राइवेट हाथों में नहीं जाएगी, ये फॉरेस्ट को ही जाएगी, तो इसीलिए हम फॉरेस्ट के साथ.
Many villagers also know that the land they're sitting on is prime property, and they suspect that the government will sell it to resort owners. Taiki Malhotra is a wildlife conservationist. She grew up in and around the tiger reserve and today works tirelessly to conserve the territory and finding a resolution for the animals and the people.
But it's a small area and we need to go right across the landscape.
We are actually working at a management plan for the area with the State Forest Department for the long-term management and protection of the area.
She says disturbance to the rivers and encroachment of the forest land have all contributed to the blocking of the corridors of the animals and creating a widened human-animal conflict. The blockage of the migratory path isolates the animals and hence adversely affects the gene pool, hurting the survival of these animals long-term.
What is important is that they need these large spaces to move. I mean, their gene pool gets affected if they don't. And they need to be able to move freely. I mean, you know, there's the boundaries that we've created between India and Nepal, but they actually can go further. Even the Nepal side, there are now settlements. So it's becoming very difficult for the elephants to go across the Sharda River, which goes into Nepal, to go across. This is actually resulting in isolated populations of elephants.
If a realistic plan is to be put in place, then mining would have to be banned. Also, what would be required is a proper assessment of resorts and how they are managed.
It needs a really well-integrated management plan which can be implemented on the ground, not just put on paper.
What would be required is to clear up the corridor of the animals on a war footing, helping these animals travel the hundreds of miles along the Himalayan foothills.
Elephants can actually move through very small spaces if required, but they have to be safe. I mean, you know, if, for instance, there are resorts or, you know, buildings that are blocking their corridor, if we can actually work with the local people to see, you know, if we can leave, it doesn't have to be a very large area, but a small area for the elephants to go past. Once they know it's safe, they will keep using it.
It is only then that the beautiful Kumaon will become what it once was, home to abundant wildlife, flora and fauna, and home to a healthy population of the tuskers and the tigers.